All right, welcome to Silver Lining, episode 15. I can't believe it. We've been running 15 episodes. We just started as an exercise, and it seems to be quite interesting. And as you've seen, the pandemic, COVID, is getting, I don't know, worse or better. I don't know. This is right now, you've caused more confusion now. I think everybody has to be more prepared for what's going to happen next. We don't know yet. And it has, in the US, we see a resurgence. I think Australia is doing better. And China, we have Beijing. The problem with Beijing is happening right now. So we don't know. This show started with the COVID. And as COVID developed, and we've been learning from ourselves as well. And I'm Yong Zhao. I'm from the University of Kansas. And we have today as host, Chris Didi from Harvard is online, and as well as Scott McCloud from University of Colorado. Today is a very special day, and we've been talking about silver lining for learning. We've not talked to students, to real learners. I mean, we are all learners in a sense, but these are the learners we're supposed to create a better education for. So we are, today is the first time we're going to have student voice. We want to talk to students and to see what they've been doing, how they have lived the COVID pandemic, and what's their plans, and what they would like to see more, see us do more, see the teachers do more, see schools do more or less, you know, in many ways. So today we're very fortunate to have 5 students from 3 different locations. I'm not going to bother introducing them. I'm going to have them introducing themselves. So what I'm going to do is to, given we have 5, so I'm going to actually call out your name, and then you will introduce yourself so we do not confuse ourselves. So let's start with Ellie. Ellie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Ellie Seifus. I'm 13. I'm a year 8 student at Linfield Learning Village, and I live in Sydney, Australia.
Thank you, Ellie. Thanks for getting up so early and come this to our show. Thank you. Paranjay, can you say a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Paranjay Jadhav. I'm from Sydney. I also go to Linfield Learning Village. And yeah, I'm a year 7 student.
Thank you so much. So let's go to Echo. Shen Shuowen, can you say a few words about yourself?
Sure. I'm Echo from China. So I'm a senior student from Delta Academy.
Thank you, Echo. Tracy?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Guo, and I study at Delta Academy too, and I live in Beijing. I'm a 12th grade student, and I'm 17 years old.
Thank you, Tracy. Now then, last but definitely not least, Ivani, can you say a few words about yourself?
Of course, I'm Ivani. I recently graduated from Hawaii Preparatory Academy, originally from Indonesia, but came here freshman year to the Big Island.
Thank you so much. So let me actually start with a question, and I'm going to put the question out. So I will start with Ivani. The question is this: what have you done you think you want to share that's out of the ordinary, just typical and most people wouldn't do? What did you do?
For the past couple of years or so, I've been working with my school's turtle research program, and also the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, to do climate change research on turtles here in West Big Island. And so I've always had this fascination with environmental science. And so I've taken this opportunity of being on island here with a lot of turtles here to research how climate change is affecting their gender populations.
And the COVID did not affect that?
COVID definitely affected that, because what I do is definitely hands-on. Yeah. So what we found with turtles is that they are temperature dependent based on their gender. So climate change is affecting them because the warmer nesting beaches are making their populations more female. So the ratios are skewed. So what we do here is go to the field, go to the beaches, and take blood samples for hormone analysis. And since COVID came around, I haven't gotten the opportunity to go out with the mentors and with the scientists to take blood and research. And so I had to switch that and just change what I wanted to do to spread the scientific research that I've done online. So it definitely affected how many samples I could take, but making it into an online platform definitely helps expand my audience. And I think it's a silver lining for that cause.
So it's expanded the audience to make it online.
Right.
Thank you. That's very
Exactly.
interesting. Tracy, how about you? What did you do during COVID?
Yes, like I'm really into social science and gender studies. So in the past year, I've been working on my research about comprehensive sexuality education and specifically peer education, because compulsory sexuality education is absent in China, but which is really important for every student. And we want our peers to have a healthier and safer life. So during the COVID, I hold online like peer seminar. So that me and my partner develop sessions of workshops about like contraceptions or STD, something like that. And then we try to test the effect of our workshops, and then we produced a research paper and a handbook for future peer educators to operate this kind of peer education, so that more students could have an opportunity to study this important issue in the absence of the compulsory education.
That's
And I
amazing
think,
in China, right?
yeah.
So something I think should be celebrated. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
And you probably notice I'm going backwards now. Echo. What about you?
I think because I'm a student, I'm really into liberal art studies, but one of my challenge during this COVID-19 quarantine time is I participated in a psychology program, and that psychology paper is aimed to create a normative data Chinese word list that create false memories. So it's about false memories. It's about like how human they remember things that it doesn't really exist. And there's a kind of instrument called dream paradigm. This research have been done in English and Spanish, but nobody have ever done it in Chinese. And because Chinese is quite a unique language, so we try to find normative data for Chinese word lists that create false memories, so that if future studies in the discipline of false memories wanted to find an instrument to test false memories, they can find our paper and use our word list.
Yeah, in many ways that you continue this work during COVID, right?
Yes, because this is a year-long course, and I think we all know how hard it is to collect data online, and we really work through a lot of platforms to make it happen.
Great, thank you. So I'm going back to Paranjit. How about you? And this goes beyond your cricket. Okay, so what did you do? What happened during COVID?
Well, I would say I didn't do such big things during COVID, but I kind of did something with me in a sense. I had worked on like self-reliance, as it took a while because the way my school system had set out the work was it had to be us doing independent work using the things that this material that they had given. So I was kind of working on trying to become more self-reliant on my learning. I had to create kind of schedules and things like that. But yeah.
Well, thanks, Paranjit. Ellie, how about you?
So I am someone that really loves to journal and document my work. So when I tried to take advantage of the coronavirus by recording monthly videos to document the progression of the virus. So it started on, I think, the 10th of February, and I decided, hey, I'm gonna record a video just outlining how the coronavirus has affected my local area, how it's affected the world, the business community, things like that. And funnily enough, this coronavirus has progressed very, very largely and has made a very big impact on the world. So I used that and I've made little documents, like little video vlogs, kind of recording and tracking that progression of the virus and how that's affected me personally and how that's affected the world, so that I can look back on that in the future, maybe in 10, 15 years time, and think, wow, like I had lived through this pandemic and how I kind of took advantage of that. So
Well, thank you very much. So I'm going to stop here to see if Chris and Scott, if I have any questions. I was doing the introduction basically of all of you, where you've done wonderful things. You've tried in personal growth and you've helped others. This is quite wonderful. Chris or Scott?
Well, I'm excited about what you're doing, and you have a great advantage actually over people like us as co-hosts, and that is that we all were students, but at a different time, and we went through probably a much more traditional educational system than you did, and as a result, we have a set of invisible walls that we constantly have to think about and try to overcome, because it's a little bit like the chicken that hatches and the first thing it sees is a dog, and so it thinks it's a dog. We were all imprinted by the industrial model of education, and it can be hard. It can be hard as an adult to think outside the box. So I'm particularly impressed by the fact that you're all taking advantage of online rather than just bemoaning what's lost in face-to-face. I think that many people think that online is an inferior form of face-to-face classroom instruction, but it's actually just a different thing. If a classroom is an apple, online is an orange. And you can look at the orange and you can say, hey, this is the wrong color. And it has a really thick peel. And you can't make pies with it very well. But that's missing the point. The point is that the orange has special things that it can do. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying is a lot of those special things, that you've been able to expand the audience that's available for your work, that peers are more able to educate each other, which was the theme of an episode that we had a few weeks ago, that data can be collected across distance, sometimes more easily than it's collected face-to-face, and that there's a whole set of 21st century skills, self-efficacy, executive function, metacognition, reflection, that take place actually more easily when you're away from the classroom and the constant fire hose of information that you're presented with, when you have more responsibility and independence online. So I think actually you're doing a better job of creative stuff with oranges than most adults are, and it's exciting.
Yes. And so anybody wants to have any reactions to Professor Didi's comments?
Well, I think,
If I could,
sorry, go ahead.
oh, sorry, no, you go ahead.
Thank you. What you said about reflection, I think, is a huge part of this, because there are so many deterring events happening right now, and this is a really good time for anyone to look at this tumultuous time as a way to look at science or look at different ways to improve our society, because we have so much time to see what's going on and see what's wrong and how we can help. And I definitely agree with you on the reflection part, because this time made me realize how important it is to listen to what we have right now and listen to what's going on and what the earth and what people are calling for. And it's definitely a good break in a sense to do that.
Thank you, Ivania. Paranja, you were going to say something?
Well, I kind of liked what Dr. Didi had said about the kind of traditional way of learning. It's a very old model, if I was to say. It was created in a time where people were doing hard labor, right? And so they were graded sometimes comparative to meat, right? And did and repeated as they were said. But with in a time like this where we have gone past that, and we have access to all these things, we should be kind of thinking about learning in a sense which shouldn't be about kind of general having a generalized model for learning, but more of a student learning model just for each student, right? So it's kind of moving away from this kind of old model which is quite outdated at this point in time, to a kind of more nuanced, which involves students being at the heart and core of learning.
All right. Scott, do you want to ask a question of our brilliant youngsters?
Yeah, I do actually, and it's a two-part question. So part one is, this is obviously really powerful community embedded work where you're trying to benefit people around you, right? And I guess I'm curious, what percentage of your day-to-day schoolwork is this kind of work, right? Where you have a lot of agency and control and ownership of where it goes. You get to self-direct your own learning. It's clearly complex, deeper thinking work. It's authentic in the sense that it's trying to benefit the world around you in some way. You're using technology in meaningful ways to do that. So I guess I'm just curious, compared to, sort of your day-to-day school existence, is this, a significant part of your learning work during the school day? Is this something that happens outside the school day? Is this something that you're doing despite what your school asks you to do, right? Like, I'm just trying to figure out how this all fits in with the other stuff you do for classes. I'd love to hear from almost all of you.
Go for it. Ellie, you want to start?
Oh, sure. So me and Paranjay are very, very lucky to go to more of a modern school that isn't so based on that traditional way of thinking and that traditional way of learning. Whereas, as Paranjay was saying, when we think of school, there is one very, very strong stereotype that all goes into our minds, which is a very, very dated stereotype. So I feel like that it's very important that we normalize difference. But Scott, back to your question, me and Parajay are very, very lucky to go to kind of a modernized school where the learning continuum and the way that the teachers have laid out students' days gives loads of opportunities for freedom and independence for students to work on projects to help with the coronavirus cause. So we have this little time called Beyond, and Beyond is about an hour session during each Friday and Wednesday. And what Beyond is we have one teacher and we have about a group of 14 students, and those 14 students in each pod group can choose where they want to take their learning journey and how they want to help this coronavirus cause. So as Paranjay was saying, he was doing a research project on self-regulation and how to change your habits and things like that. So the teachers really, really encourage students to use all of these amazing resources, and our school really teaches students independence and how to self-regulate. And especially during the time of the coronavirus, everyone was quarantined, right? So this almost forced students to be able to regulate themselves. I can remember I was discovering when I was most productive during the day, and there were so many things that were beneficial that we took away from this cause. And coming back to school after that break of quarantining really had shaped the students and changed them, and also really taught them how to self-regulate, how to manage their time. And I feel like that there were definitely some things that were very beneficial from the virus. So thank you for asking.
Well, thank you. Ivani, do
If
you
I
want to respond to the same question? Then we're going to go to our Tracy and our Beijing folks too.
Sure. Yeah, my school has a similar concept called capstone classes, and Mr. Shorn, who's actually on this call, is the capstone coordinator. And what it does is gives people the chance to go and do their own projects. And mine happens to deal with something that I've been working with for years, which is turtles. And I use that as an opportunity to incorporate the biotechnology class that I was in, the capstone class, to do a project that I was passionate about, I am passionate about. And during these classes, it gives people more individuality and time to explore their own interests. Like during class, I would go to the beach and collect blood samples in the middle of the day, which was really great. It was a great opportunity that I had, and I'm really grateful for it. And I guess having that opportunity to go and do your own project like that gives so much wiggle room for people to explore what they are really into at an earlier stage. And that helped me during COVID-19 because I continue to do that not just with biotechnology, but with other courses as well. And it helps me realize what I want to explore and how I can explore things.
Great, thank you,
um,
Vanny. I think I'm glad
yeah.
Aaron is there. So, Paranje, you want something to add to that? Thank you.
Well, like Ellie said, you may need a bit more background info on what Linfield Learning Village is about. Well, in Linfield Learning Village is kind of focused on student personalized learning, and so in this it involves kind of a student experience rather than the generalized model, as I've said. And it kind of is a thing where students are treated more as a learner, and this is all based off the kind of new pedagogical thinking, right? So it kind of is it's kind of sorry it kind of is focused on personalization and for a learner, and learners can be teachers, students, and even parents in some cases. And an example of this could be the IDU. IDU for us is interdisciplinary unit. This focuses on characteristics of learning, which are the behavioral habits showed during learning, such as like collaboration, creativity, resilience, self-awareness, and empathy. And within this kind of session we do activities and projects. The most recent one was a one on logic puzzles and collaboratively working together to kind of get get towards some kind of common understanding and an answer towards questions. So yeah.
Well, so as you can tell, schools are run differently. Linfield school, you guys are from, seems to be different. Let's hear from maybe Tracy and Echo. Do you guys want to jump in to talk about how your project are run in response to Professor McLeod's question?
Yes, I would say like our research is a huge part of our education because there is a program in our school called IRP, which is independent research program, and we will start this program from senior 2, which is 11th grade, and each year we'll do a year-long research, and we have a course that the teacher will teach us how to do the research in like college level, and also in the senior 3 we will choose our track, like your nature science or social science or others, and so we can have our professional supervisor, and that we will meet every other week. So I would say that our research is like pushed by our education, but also supported by our education. And so in this support, we will have a space, but also like resources to help us to achieve this results.
Well, thank you, Tracy. Our Echo, do you have something to add?
Yes, so just to add up to what Tracy just said, I think it goes back to what Dr. Didi just said about how educators can also be our peers. Because for our senior year project, we actually have a team, which is 2 to 3 people who is interested in the same topic or subject, we actually made it into a team. We spent a whole year long to discover into this disciplinary and this specific topic. So during this time, I think I really learned a lot from my peers, and when they have new resources, we will share it to a group, and I think it really kind of I've never imagined doing research with other people before that, because we are doing individual work more. But through this senior year, I think we really learned a lot of, like, we have coping mechanisms. We will be more prepared into college, coping these teamworks. And we also learn how to communicate effectively during quarantine time, because when you are not saying things in person, there's always some misunderstanding or something like that. We learn how to cope all these challenges. So yeah, just like what Tracy just said, it's really a huge part of our education, but it's not what we are forced by school. I think we are more launching this by ourselves, by our interest, and we are supported by our teacher and our peers.
So if I
Thank
can
you.
ask quickly a question about parents.
Mm-hmm.
I interact a lot with parents because I try to change the educational system, and that can make them excited or nervous depending on where they're coming from. Yesterday morning early, I gave a talk to parents in India, for example. And of course, a lot of them, because I'm from Harvard, were saying, well, how can I get my kid into Harvard? Which was not what I wanted to be there to talk about. But I imagine parents watching this show, and I imagine some of the parents being really excited because what you're doing is passion-driven learning. You're picking what you're passionate about, and then the academic subjects all flow into that, because we know in any real world complicated situation, all of the fields and all of the disciplines can reside. But I also imagine other parents are watching and say, wait a minute, that isn't school as I knew it. And are you learning about the Pythagorean theorem? And are you learning about, what the Greeks believed? And are you going to do well on the high stakes tests so that you'll get into an elite university? So I'm curious as to how your parents respond, and if sometimes they encounter those tensions between being excited about what you're excited about and being nervous about the structure, the larger industrial structure that we're all part of.
Paranja, go ahead. You had your hand up. Okay.
Well, as Dr. Didi said, about he wants to change the education system, right? And there's some parents holding back. I was reading this book called What's the Point of School by Guy Claxton. You may know it. And in it, he talked about how even some parents are scared that the education system is changing, right? And what they don't realize is that even if they don't want their kids to go into a kind of experimental school, the education system as we know it is still experimental. So it's kind of that. And also we kind of the thing is, we should kind of let go of academics and how like they play the most biggest part in education as we know it. So and education as we know it, right? So with us knowing that learning is more about being able to learn instead of learning specific things, we can improve in that kind of front. So what I'm trying to get to is that we shouldn't be scared about change when we know change is important for the future. So yeah.
That's an amazing answer, Paranja. You're great. So anybody else wants to jump into this, respond to this
Yes.
passion-driven? Ivani, I
Sure.
saw that you had your hand up.
Yeah. I do have to say a big thank you to my parents, because they actually haven't really pushed me to go to the educational route. They haven't been there themselves. but that freedom that they gave me to just pursue what I wanted to do, and that values that they gave me allowed me to have my own say in what I want to learn and what I want to spend my time in. And so that allowed me to learn about where I live and how I am going to be in the future within my local community. And it shapes me to become who I wanted to be because it gave me so much freedom to do that. And I think that education is such a useful tool behind that because it allows you to advocate for something that you believe in. And it's just like it's definitely a tool, but I think application is where it should be stressed. And that's exactly what education is for applying it to the real world. And that's why I'm so invested in this. And I have to thank my parents for that.
Well, thank you, Vani. That's beautiful. Well, we got Tracy, Echo, and Ellie. I don't know if you guys want to jump in.
Yeah. Okay,
Go ahead,
thank you.
Tracy.
Like I think my parents have that typical anxiety towards SAT stuff. Like they want me to get like 15,000 or just want me to get into like top 20 American universities. But I think I reversely educate my parents by my passion because like I said, I'm really into social science and gender studies. So I spend a lot of my time on my research, and I also go to find internship, trying to just explore what I want. It's also inspired by my education, but I think they are kind of moved by like my how to say my strong drives, and they'll say then you just like go to a city optional college, it's okay too. And yeah, so now I'm in a liberal arts college, and which I really love.
Where are you going to after this?
Wesleyan University. Me and Echo are also like both go to there.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that's wonderful. And I will have Ellie. Are we going to say something, right?
Yeah, so I was just going to quickly talk about how my parents personally are very, very interested in, my personal passions and how my school is incorporating that into their school curriculum. So I personally would consider myself a very creative person. I'm really into artworks, interior design, stuff like that. And when I went to Linfield Learning Village, there were so many different opportunities that the school had given me that, really could help me incorporate that into my personalized learning. Personalized learning style. And it's so important that, as Paranjay said, we need to normalize change because change is such an important thing for the future. If students have a passion that they want to, incorporate into their career in the future, the teachers should really be able to get on a mutual level with students to find that drive and motivation and help that to shape their learning journey. So one thing that my school does is to make sure that, as Echo said, teachers are peers. We actually call our teachers by their first names to give for the most mutual level for teachers and students, which at the start may sound a bit weird, but it definitely was something to get used to. But I know that if I had issues or troubles, I could go up to almost any teacher in my school and talk about that on a personal level, because our teachers have such a strong belief about discovering students personally before they go into their academic phase about learning subjects. So it's really important that teachers can get to the bottom of that and discover their students in a personal way to shape their learning journey for the future. So that's really interesting.
That's amazing to have teachers like that. I was just wondering, Echo, how about you? Since we're getting everyone to answer this question, it's an important question about parents' views and teachers. Echo, do you have on something to share about that?
Yes, I think a very important keyword between your relationship between your parents is trust. And I think when they trust you, you shouldn't let them down. I think my parents really trusted me when I choose Dalton Academy, because it's not a normal high school in China, and all of our class is seminar based, and they are just so used to lecture based class, and they can't understand like what is a seminar based class and what's the point of getting students sitting around and discussing about things. But I think gradually, with more and more communication between you and your parents, it is definitely like understandable for them to know what the institution you're in is doing and what you are doing, as long as you trust each other and you have like enough communication. So I think maybe that's not I think maybe it's not a big deal if we are all open to communicate. Yeah.
Thank you. So well, basically, you've heard, these children go to great schools. Schools make a difference. I can tell you, there are not many schools like this. Okay, so when I sent out this request for people to say, hey, who would like to be on this show? I didn't get many responses, but the ones we've got, I have to tell you, they're pretty amazing. They all have very interesting, I think, open liberal parents. So that's amazing things happening here. And there's another important question I think that's been raised. By the way, the audience is raving about this show, that you guys are doing wonderful. Everybody would love you in their school, as leaders, as teachers. I'm going to give this next question to Scott. Would you like to ask the question?
Yes, I would. Thank you. So the audience has asked this question about half a dozen times. And what they really want to know is, they love your projects and they love sort of this self-driven learning and community embedded learning that you're doing. They're really interested in where you got your background knowledge for this work. Like, is this work that you're doing that is a direct extension of things you did in class? Is this mostly learning that you're doing on your own, right? Like, because there's some complex writing in here, there's some complex science in what you're talking about, there's some complex what we might call executive functioning skills, Veronja, what you called self-regulation, and so on, right? Like, you're doing some high-level research, you're doing some high-level authentic work. Is that coming out of your classes? Is that something that you're just sort of picking up as part of working on the projects? They really want to know where your background knowledge is coming from.
Go for it. Anybody wants to start? You want me to point names? I can. Oh, let me start with Ellie. So that I'm going to go through names. Okay.
Okay, so really, really interesting question about that. So what I would have to say is, something that really motivates and drives different students is, their personal passions and what they are personally interested in. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm a very creative student and I love all work to do with creativity. So I based my personal projects and passion projects on creativity. So maybe an example would be redesigning a school classroom for the ultimate productivity and flow of students. So incorporating that knowledge that I already have about creativity into my current projects is a really important thing. And then you might be asking, Ellie, where did you get all this knowledge about the creativity that you already have? This is just stuff that I have learned from school in the past years. As I said, I'm only a year 8 student, so I'm not as advanced as some of the amazing students here, but I definitely have been pushed to learn things about my passion, because following your motivation and following your drive is such an important skill to have. So I've done that, and then I've incorporated that into some of my projects. So an example of that might be, if I had a history, let's say, essay, a book report or something, I might say to myself, and I might be not so motivated to write a 20-page report on this book that I had read. So my teachers would really encourage me to come up with a new way of thinking and come up with a new way of doing that. So it's kind of like thinking outside the box. So I might make a 20-minute video explaining and breaking down the book. Do you know what I mean? So that's just like a different way of doing things, which is, really, really interesting to me. But as I said, back to the core of that question, where do you get your exterior knowledge? Mainly for me personally, I'm not sure about you guys. For me, it's a really big part of the teachers to push their students and to encourage them to really dig into those motivations and dig into those drives about what they're passionate about. And from that, they can extend their learning. So it really is a big part of the teachers to encourage and motivate their students to do that. Yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about that question.
Well, thank you. I'm going to go to Echo, and then I'm going to Pranja. So then I'm going to go to the last two. So we got everybody to talk about this one. You guys raised great questions. Thank you. Echo, go ahead. Where did you get your background knowledge? How did your passion grow, you know?
I think taking advantage of, like, we don't really have class teaching you SATs or standardized test stuff or something. What we have is very, very interesting courses, and that's what I really loved about Dalton, is that all teachers are not forced to teach anything, but they teach what they are really passionate, and they teach their interest. So like when I was in a class called Madness in Civilization, when my teacher introduced, by the way, that's a course about like psychology. So it's kind of like an introduction to psychology, but it's through a more interesting lens. So when my teacher introduced this wonderful discipline to me, he was like, his eyes was glowing, and it's like, it's so attractive to me, because when I think it's a huge difference when you got a chance to teach what you love, and you were forced to finish your job or something like that. So I think back to that question, I think most of my background knowledge were all accumulated through the 3-year learning in Dalton. So many classes I took, and I get the chance to explore, because we don't really have that much of mandatory classes, and we have chance to select course we are interested in. And like what Tracy just said, we still have different track, so the school will like make sure that you are in track. So I think most of my background knowledge comes from, and my interest also grows from the courses I took through these 3 years.
So the introduction to new ideas, interactions with teachers, that's amazing. Paranja, do you have something you want to share with us about when you do this work, where'd you get the knowledge?
Well, for me, my knowledge because I used to just not like school at all. For me, it was a chore. Learning was like, I have to go to school. Learning happens at school. That's all that happens, right? But and I used to love going back home and just doing studies on things from genetics to all the way to political stuff. And from that, my knowledge grew, right? And so when I came to LLV, I got this opportunity to explore learning more. And so with teachers' help, for me, learning happens everywhere. It's at this moment, listening to everyone speak and listen to all their great ideas. And so this opportunity that was given to me, I've been able to access books from The Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, one of my favorite books now, to Mythos by Stephen Fry and all that stuff. And I'd say it's kind of it's come from the sense of comfort in learning, and which is being created with me being at LLV. And so I guess for me, this self drive was always there. Like it was always burning slowly, but since I've been given the opportunities to access so much things, I've been able to grow into something bigger, and I'm just so grateful and happy at this point in time. So yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think you said that passion is always with you. I think it's everybody is born with such a passion, but what happens to that passion may be different. Like when we go different schools, different families will be different. Tracy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there are three stages of me getting my knowledge. And the first stage is just me scrolling on Google, YouTube, and oh, gender is an interesting issue. And then I went to my school and I found, oh, there are so many interesting courses, just as Echo said. Like I took like women studies across continents and post-colonial African feminist, and also we also have individual student club that we will talk about gender trouble, like the second sex. There's like a book seminar. So this is the second stage that I have resources and I know what book should I read, and my peers to talk about this issue. And the third stage is that my school also taught me to like explore in the outside world, that I know how to find internship, that like I just send the email that if you need a high school research assistant, because I have this high schooler lens that like maybe your research team need. So then I go to a research team and like try to hone my proficiency. So I think this is my three stages of getting my knowledges.
Nice.
Well, that's beautiful. I love this. Many people love this process, how you go through this. Different people may have different process, but that's quite nice. I think we have Ivania. How about you?
Well, my process stems from my upbringing. It stems right from the start. I was born and raised in Jakarta, Indonesia. It's a very, very populated, very polluted city. And that environment, being in traffic and being around pollution all the time and staying indoors and learning how to bike in the lobby of my apartment, really implanted this drive in me to do something better for my environment. And when I moved to America, it made me realize what opportunities are here. And thankfully, I went to a place that gave me such great resources to learn about science. I never thought that I would be in a research position or be what my brothers call a turtle doctor. But it's really great to just experience these new things. And I signed up for a club my freshman year called Turtle Research Program. And there I met mentors from all over. And my junior year, actually, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration came and they taught me about climate change, and they taught me about what's going on around the world. And at that moment, it gave me so much drive because I was in classes that I loved, like environmental science and biology. And that definitely helps me to be more out there. And so I worked with these specific mentors that came, and I started hands-on doing what I've been learning. And I think that helps me realize what I can do with not just science, but also other things like youth and government, how I can implement it in policy making or in other branches. And that definitely sparked my interest here, because this environment where I'm in, the Big Island, is so contrasting to Indonesia. And it helps me realize what the world can be like and how I can change it personally. So it definitely comes from where I am from. Yeah.
Thank you, Ivani. Thank you. All of you guys are bringing amazing stories of new types of learning, with some people call personalized learning, passion driven, whatever it is. That's something so drastically different. I'm very impressed. So we got about another 10 minutes. I can keep talking to you guys for days, for months, for years. This is wonderful. I want to give this chance to say Professor Christina. Chris, you want to ask me a question?
I want to bring up an issue and then a question related to it. One of the things that led us to start Silver Lining for Learning, and one of the themes that's been part of every single episode, has been how to help people who have been marginalized by society. And of course, most of the students in the world do not have access to what we have access to. Their parents may be working multiple jobs just to try to put food on the table. Their home environments may be chaotic. They may not have a teacher or a teacher who shows up regularly. They may not have access to much in the way of educational technology. And we've had speakers who've talked about strategies for dealing with that. One of the strategies that I have not heard much about is the strategy of using successful students like you as inspirations and teachers for marginalized students. And that may sound a little odd because you're students yourselves, and we don't want to thrust adulthood on you. Believe me, you'll get there, and you want to enjoy being young while you can. But on the other hand, we do know that one of the best ways of learning something is teaching it to somebody else. And we do know that even marginalized students have access typically to social media, and that social media can provide very powerful ways of doing the kind of expanded audiences and peer learning and research across distance and sharing that you've been doing here with us. So I just don't know if you have any thoughts about this idea that maybe we as educators should do a better job of taking students who are like you, clearly, you know, excelling, and using and asking them to spend at least 10% of their time, perhaps, being beacons and teachers for others.
Yes, I think during the pandemic, I actually feel that I've been benefited by the online learning as the marginalized people, like relatively marginalized, because I have the opportunity to access to like really advanced academic meetings that used to hold in like maybe hold in a hotel, but now they hold online, so that I have an opportunity to access. So like what I'm doing is the peer education, the online, the webinar. So what I've been thinking is that could we do the peer educator to like other high schoolers? Maybe I think like for all of the students who don't have sexuality education, I think they're relatively marginalized, but also like but specifically for economically or like their living conditions are like the more special student, that I think we should put more effort to it. And I think online learning might be an opportunity to achieve this like education equality, because now we can share our resource as long as you have a laptop or a phone. And as peers, we can also be educators like to other students. And that's why we like produce the handbook, because as long as you know how to operate these workshops, then everyone can be a peer educator. And like we can hold these workshops or like produce this education opportunities everywhere. So I think maybe COVID-19 give us like a new opportunity to open this era of like education equality.
Thank you. Who wants to jump in? Paranja, please.
Well, it's hard to explain, but with marginalization of people, it's about their mental state and how they're motivated towards doing things. And as we can see with COVID-19, this group has grown much more, since many students would have been left out of the education system because either no access to technology, kind of hard, it's hard to do stuff in at home, whether that be family problems or other things. But it's kind of shown us that we need to strengthen the education system, and we need to help students, each person one by one, because with a model that's meant for everyone, it's kind of hard to help students because everyone's different, and you can't define a group with one person. So if you were to kind of fix this from my perspective, it it is about going to the root of it. It's about starting at the beginning of the education system. It's whether that's in the parliament or the primary schools or even the preschools. We need to find a way that everyone can have access to everything easily, and there's no pure solution for this. From it's You can't truly like find a way that fits everyone, but maybe we can start with at least putting time and energy into research that allows education not only to be defined at a process that happens at school, but a process that happens everywhere. So yeah.
Well, thank you, Paranjit. That's a very hard question. You know that, this marginalized group, and Chris is asking about 10% of your time. And I think you're right. We got to do a lot more than trying to do more than 10%. Ivani, you are going to say something?
Yeah, I really liked what Tracy said about the handbook. It's about writing it and also understanding what the handbook means, really. And I think having that tool to access and listen and utilize information online based on true data is so much power to anyone. And that's what online learning has become. And not only learning the Pythagorean theorem, like you said, but also furthermore, working towards like how to create it into something greater. How do you add color to it? How do you put it into legislation? How do you put it into work in medicine and in law? And I think having that put online is so useful. And online has definitely benefited my project personally, because I was able to put things online and have the mentors that I worked with like use it themselves and help others. And it just creates a bigger network, and creating this handbook of a bigger network helps anyone, and it helps them if they know how to read it though. So having students learn about how to read journals or difficult documents from an earlier stage would probably help a lot of marginalized people. And I think there is already so much of that out there. It's just how do you start doing it is the question.
Well, I think the idea of students helping, working, serving a purpose, I think all of you have that. So let's hear from Ellie. Say, what do you think?
Yeah, so an idea that I thought of is I like to think as students and teachers as people. The student and the teacher are just two different labels for these two different people. Now, the teacher might have more expertise than the student, but really we are thinking of these humans and people as labels. So a teacher is someone who, shares all their prior expertise and knowledge with students to further shape the new generation and shape the future. Now, if there are students like us that already have so much knowledge and so much, have so much, what's the word? Resources, like access to so many different advanced resources, us students or us people need to use that and can share that with so many different people across the world. Now, as Ivani was saying about digital learning, as we're coming into a new generation and as we're coming into a new kind of future, digital learning is such a new thing for everyone, yet I feel like that we are taking such advantage of this. There are so many different things that we can do with all the different resources that we have. We need to use that. And it's so important that students that already have so much knowledge to give are able to share that knowledge with other students and even teachers across the world, and use those resources to teach others. As I said, teaching is the best way of learning. So it's so important that we don't give students and teachers labels, and we all just refer to them as mutual people. And that's really something important that I have to say.
This is very exciting. So Echo, I won't give you the last word. Paranja, I won't be able to give you the chance to say more, but we'll maybe have you guys back to run a different show because we'll run out of time. Echo, you get the last word.
Okay, so I think one thing that we have, one stereotype we have towards education is we think of it as a very significant thing. One thing I didn't mention at the beginning is that me and Tracy actually launched a podcast, and we did share a lot of our perspective towards social events and also like the quarantine situation. And surprisingly, I think when I look back, I think that could be called as education in some ways, because we do influence people thinking more about this. And I think maybe by trusting students and like what Ella just said, kind of getting rid of the labels, and by taking advantage of all the technology we have now, and we can do really good education when we take it as a small thing instead of a very significant step to make.
Thank you. So this has been a fantastic episode. I'm so happy you all came. I know it's very early for Echo and Tracy in China. Right now it's just 6:30. I just want to emphasize, I actually have been starting projects like this. So my belief is that everybody in a new age needs to be unique and great. You have to be unique, great, and if it's strength-based. Education is about you. Then the second thing, you have to learn to use your uniqueness to serve other people. You create value by serving others. And through that process, you become better and more unique and even better. So that's a process. I just started a project called HIP, Human Interdependence Project. And if you guys are interested in, we're about to run a bunch of summer camps, of HIP summer camps in China, in Australia, in the US, in different places. It's quite fascinating. And before I end, I want to thank each and every one of you, and also thank you, the teachers who helped in this process. You probably know the two Chinese students are from Spencer Fowler's school, the Dalton Academy in Beijing. Spencer was on our show. And the Ellie and Paranja from Stephanie McConnell School, that's Linfield Learning Village. And we also have just now, so Erin and Josh, and have been helpful with helping us finding amazing people like Ivani. So thank you very much. And our next episode is going to be our among the hosts, Reflect. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about you. And thank you and take care.